Okay, so this is the last section in chapter one, Introduction to Sociology. And what we're finishing up on is why should you study sociology? Well, some of the reasons studying sociology have to do with what happens in society. So let's look at one of the first uh, research aspects that sociologists did to really assist in modern times. We had the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. Um, this was really a huge difference in society's way of considering education from a racial perspective. Now, we all understand the Central High School, Little Rock, well, the Little Rock Nine. We understand Brown versus Board of Education. But what we don't know, what you may not know, is that it was two African American doctors, Doctors Kenneth and Mamie Clark, who had a psychology doctorate from Columbia University. But um, their work was conducted, and Dr. Mamie Clark's master's thesis was on self-identification in Black children. And she really was very instrumental in the doll experiments and the internalized racism, so negative effects of segregation for African American children. Well, so one of the major factors influencing the U.S. Supreme Court overturning 21 state laws that allow Black and white to be taught in separate school systems as long as the school systems were, quote, equal. It was based on these two psychologists who did work in segregation and how it was harmful to young Black school children. And so the court determined that harm to the population, to the Black students, was unconstitutional. Uh, and so one of the reasons that people are pulled to sociology is not just this idea of just the desegregation, but also how do we improve society? So, so sociology has played a crucial role in equal opportunities for women, treatment for individuals who are handicapped with either mental handicap, physical handicaps, learning disabilities, the rights of indigenous populations to preserve their land and culture. And we continue to work on prison system reforms as far as the criminal justice system goes, as far as sentencing goes, and as far as the prosecution goes. Now, Dr. Peter Berger wrote a book, The Invitation to Sociology, a Humanist Perspective. And this was 1963. And what he said is a sociologist is someone concerned with understanding society in a disciplined way. And Berger also talks about this idea of we um, how we have a natural interest as sociologists in the big moments of people's lives as well as the everyday existence. But also the aha moment. He talks about the aha moment when a theory becomes applicable and understood. And he says this, and this is actually in your text. there is a deceptively simplicity and obviousness about sociological investigations. One reads them, nods at the familiar scene, remarks that one has heard all of this before, and don't people have better things to do than to waste their time on truisms? Until one is suddenly brought up against an insight that radically questions everything one had previously assumed about this familiar scene. This is the point at which one begins to sense the excitement of sociology. Um, it's actually very exciting. One of the reasons that we think also about it being exciting is it explains to us how we fit into the world and how other people look at us and how other people perceive us, and how we can connect to different groups based on various ways that we classify ourselves, how society classifies us. And so it brings also an awareness. So it brings us a self-awareness. It elevates our awareness of how economic status, and education, ethnicity, race, sexual orientations affect perceptions, affect other people's perceptions, but also affect the way that we perceive ourselves. It explains and teaches us how to not accept all of just the easy explanations, but it teaches us to organize our thinking so we can ask better questions and come up with better answers. So it increases our ability to try to see the world from other people's perspectives. It also allows us to be more aware of the difference of people in the world who do not live or think as we do. It prepares us to live and work in an increasing diverse and integrated world. You know, I talk about this from a perspective of as a child who grew up in the Deep South in the early 60s, and who learned very early on that there were different people, and who learned very early on that all of these people were just exactly like I was. That what they wanted to do was go to school. What they wanted to do was live peacefully. What they wanted to do was go to church, worship the way they wanted to. They wanted to be able to buy clothes. They wanted to be able to go to the grocery store. They wanted to be able to earn money. And they wanted to create businesses. They wanted to have the same exact life that others did. And it was very interesting when I talk about this from a perspective now of looking back and saying, if I, as a 4, 5, or 6 year old, could understand that, why could adults not? If I could understand that my black classmates wanted an education, wanted to read Tip and Mitten just like I did, that they wanted to grow up and become a teacher just like I did. It puts a perspective on how you view yourself, but it also puts a perspective on how you view other people. We can talk about also sociology in the workplace. We have this idea of, in fact, I read an article just today about how employers are not able to hire people because there are no transferable skills. They want to hire people that have knowledge and education and whose education skill sets can contribute to their company. And so studying sociology gives you a lot of the skills needed, even in the 21st century workplace. People say, what can I do? What am I going to be able to do? Here's some of the sociological skills. We understand the social systems. We understand the large bureaucracies. We can devise and carry out research projects to look at our policies working, is the program working. We look at program, evaluation. We can collect and read and analyze statistical information from polls or surveys. We have a important difference. We can recognize these differences in people's economic backgrounds, their cultural backgrounds, their social backgrounds. We have skills in preparing reports and communicating complex issues, and we have a capacity to critical thinking about social issues and problems that confront us. So, what are we hired within? When we finish in sociology, some students of mine have gone on and gone to go into social work. Some have gone into counseling. Some have gone into community planning, health services. They've gone into marketing research. Some of them have gone to law school, and so they have taken their training in sociology to teaching, to law school, to criminal justice, to working in journalism, to sales. A lot of people go, oh, but I don't want to do sales. I'm going to tell you something. Having been a salesperson for a really long time with a company or two, I made a lot of money in sales. It doesn't mean that the job is there forever, but I did a lot of work in it. I made a lot of reports. I was able to communicate some of the complexness of what was going on and why was the market shifting or why was the market not there. So, the one thing about sociology is you have an understanding. You can do the research. So if you have a background in sociology or you're interested in studying sociology, I always make sure that everyone has critical skills, transferable skills that you can take to the marketplace. And you can say, these are the things that I've learned. So this is the end of chapter 1, the intro section. And what we will go to next is chapter 2, sociological research.